It's 6 o'clock on a Friday, and that means you're here on A State of Mind watching the state of Scottish football with myself, Colin Watt, and my fabulous co-host, Sean McGill. 2 weeks in a row I've complimented you, Sean, and keeping the trend going.
I like it. I mean, last week you started it and pictures were flying off the wall and stuff like that. So maybe that's it's a jinx. We better watch out. That clipboard behind you and your tickets will come crashing down. So you better watch.
Well, speaking of tickets, it's good to see that the fans will be getting back into the grounds this weekend. We do have a full card of the Premier Sports Cup. I'm still getting used to saying that. I'm so used to saying the Betfred Cup. I'm sure they'll love that. But it's the Premier Sports Cup or the League Cup for the traditionalists this weekend. 8 games to cover, and we'll take a look at each and every one of them. We'll also be taking a look at some of the transfer speculation of the last 24 hours. And also we'll take a look back at the Scottish team's performance in Europe over the last couple of days. I know last night the team were on. Again, another late shift for the state of Scottish football team. 10 o'clock start. I'm sure they were tired this morning. How did that one go, Sean?
I thought it was really good. Yeah, I actually really like doing those reaction shows, that just getting to talk about the games immediately after they happen. And even though it was well past my bedtime and I was a wee bit grumpy this morning, I managed to pull through just about all right. And yeah, I really enjoyed doing them. And I'm looking forward to the fact that we'll still have 4 teams in Europe to talk about next week. So that's really, really exciting. And I look forward to doing another one of those shows.
Definitely. And we're live just now on Facebook, on Twitch, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn, of all places. We are everywhere at the moment with the state of Scottish football. If you are watching us, get involved. Just like Jerry H has came in to do their Buenos Tardes. Jerry joins us from Miami. Let us know where you're watching from and let us know your predictions for the games this weekend. Sean, we have to start, though, with the game that's just about to kick off in the next couple of hours. It's the Friday night fixture at Ibrox, Rangers versus Dunfermline. This is live on Premier Sports, if anyone has the subscription. If not, I'm sure there'll be some dodgy links for you to go and watch it. Rangers coming off the back of that defeat midweek to Malmo, knocking them out of the Champions League. Sean, were you surprised at that result?
Yeah, I think the most surprise that comes out of it is the fact that Rangers had such a big advantage in that game. They were a goal up on the night and they had a man advantage at half-time, and you just thought that, considering how impressive Rangers have been, not just over the last few years, but in Europe under Steven Gerrard's tenure as a whole, you thought there's no way they don't see this out. And it was a capitulation, much like in the first leg, just a short period of time where defensive mistakes and a lack of sort of personality in a defensive aspect completely cost them. And I think if Rangers had just gone out to Malmo in what you would call normal circumstances, then I still think it would be a little bit of a disappointment, but perhaps not the sort of cry and shame that everyone is looking at as a real worry. But the fact that the Rangers of old, of last season, been in that position, would not have surrendered the position they were in. And I think that's where the real concern comes for Steven Gerrard.
And speaking about that, obviously they're now playing on Thursday night. It's a Lashkert they're playing in the next round, is that right?
Yeah.
A Lashkert. So it's a long journey for the second leg. The first leg being at home on Thursday night, which is why Celtic's game in the Europa League has been moved to the Wednesday night. When you look at it, a game like this against Dunfermline, considering that Rangers have been on this run of 3 consecutive defeats, they'll see this as a game where they can maybe get their morale back into the team, get the confidence back going, especially ahead of what is a massive next, 10, 14 days of fixtures, cumulating with the game against Celtic at the end of the month. There's no way that Rangers can continue to keep pulling these kind of defeats out of the bag. They need to find a way to get a win.
Yeah, and especially against championship opposition. I think that it's must win tonight. I think there'll be big noises coming out of Glasgow if there was a shock result. And Dunfermline have had a kind of tough start to the season. And opening day they drew with Morton, which is kind of a surprise considering Morton were tipped to struggle in the championship this season.
Morton are flying, monotone.
Morton had a very good and surprising. I think it's because I tipped them to finish bottom of the table. That's why they're having such a good start. And Pars were the team that I thought would push Kilmarnock the closest in the championship this season. Based off the first 2 games, that's not going to be the case. Obviously, like I said, that 2-2 draw with Morton and then a 3-0 defeat at the hands of League One champions Partick Thistle at last weekend. Thrashed them, really completely outplayed them, which is going to be a concern for Peter Grant and his side. But to get back to Rangers, I think that if anything other than a pretty comfortable win tonight, and those eyebrows are going to be raised even further.
Speaking about like the game on Thursday night they've got coming up against Alaska, do you see them maybe doing a bit of squad rotation for tonight's game? Maybe guys like Nathan Patterson getting his chance to stake a claim for the jersey?
Not a bad player to chuck in if you're going to have to do some squad rotation. It's the beauty that Celtic and Rangers have, isn't it? There's so many talented players at their disposal. Yeah, I think that will be the case. I think that no league fixtures this week, obviously, the Premier Sports Cup, and like I said, Championship opposition. I'd expect some of the more fringe players to feature for Rangers. Nathan Patterson's a pretty good shout. Obviously, the player next to Conor Goldson kind of changes fairly regularly. I know that Nikola Katic was one of the talented young Scottish players playing in for the Colts team on Wednesday night, I think it was, at the Rock against Dumbarton. So that may be somewhere you look. Calvin Bassey probably at left back as well. A few changes just to try and freshen up, and they know how big that game is because neither Celtic or Rangers will want to be dropping into that Conference League. I think that because they've set the standard that Europa League, of course, Rangers have got to the last 16 in the Europa League on the last two occasions. I think that they'll be very much be making that their aim, and I think anything other than that, specifically for Rangers, would be viewed as a big failure.
Definitely. Not to do Dunfermline a disservice, I think they'll come into the game with their heads held high. Although they've only taken 1 point from the first 6 in the Championship, Peter Grant will know all about going to Ibrox and he knows how to dig out a victory there. They could be a very dangerous opposition if Rangers don't take this seriously enough tonight. Although, when you look at it, could this potentially be some of the Rangers players' last games in a Rangers jersey? There is rumours going through the media at the moment that they will have to sell some players over the next couple of days. Who do you think would be the kind of ones that you would expect Rangers to move on in that time?
The two big names that seem to be getting spoken about are probably their two most influential players. This may be a bit harsh on James Tavernier, obviously he contributes a lot of goals, but I think that certainly on a European stage, Glenn Kamara is absolutely massive for Rangers. The composure he brings to that midfield and the technical ability he has, I think they were massively missing it against Malmo. I think it's worth saying that the reason he's wasn't featured in that tie because he's serving a UEFA ban for responding to being racially abused, which I think is disgusting, really. So Glenn Kamara is one of those players who there seems to be Premier League interest in him, which makes sense considering the performances he's put on. I think he's a top player, and of course the other one's Alfredo Morelos. Porto seem to be the name linked once again. Of course, they'd be playing Champions League football. You'd expect Morelos to head somewhere that has that sort of stature about it, even though I'd say Rangers and Porto are kind of on a similar par at the moment. Porto still have that stature as a club who can compete in Europe sort of more competitively, I would say. They can obviously they knocked Juventus out of last year's Champions League, so that's a kind of bigger European destination, I would say, for them. So Morelos and Kamara would probably be the two. I don't think Morelos will play tonight, though. You'd expect one of the other forward options to be given their chance.
Yeah, maybe someone like Jermaine Defoe will be up front for Rangers tonight. Well, by the time we come off air, we probably will have seen the team sheet. So it is, considering we've got another 7 games to go through, it's prudent that we move on to the predictions. So I'll start, and I expect Rangers to bounce back tonight, and I'm predicting them to win 4-0.
4-0, pretty comprehensive. I think that there's still going to be nerves in this Rangers side. They might, and Dunfermline will put on make it pretty difficult for them, I think. So I will say 2-0 to Rangers.
2-0 to Rangers. Both of us going for a Rangers victory. Apologies to any Dunfermline fans and Mikey Mikovic who may be watching. We did ask you to let us know where you're coming in from. William Pedden comes in to say he's here in Dubai. The Woodslinger on Twitch, giving us a bit of a Italian flavour. And KGM coming all the way from Barcelona, one of my favourite cities in the world. Let us know where else you're coming in from, and let's get your predictions in. William coming in to say 3-0 to the Gers, followed by Jerry as well, who also predicts 3-0. Let's look at the other main topic in the headline, and that is the chance for Celtic to gain revenge for their opening day defeat to Hearts in the cinch. I love a bit of cinch. Premier League. This time in the Premier Sports Cup. Since then, Celtic have went on a run of 3 consecutive wins, scoring 13 goals. They come up against the Hearts side, who are currently sitting top of the league with 6 points out of 6. First of all, let's take a look back at last night's performance in the Europa League for Celtic, a 3-0 win over Jablonec, seeing them through to the next round for the game against AZ Alkmaar. What did you make of that performance, Sean?
Yeah, as I said on last night's show, this is only when I didn't catch sort of any of the game at the time. I've been catching up with it after, but I think just to see Celtic's attacking players thrive is quite exciting. I've said it's been a while since watching Celtic play good football has been the reason I've been excited to watch Celtic. It's more been the fact that there have been a bit of a calamity, and as a supporter of a smaller club, that tends to be pretty funny. So the fact that they've just been playing good football, and obviously that 6-0 performance against Dundee was massively encouraging. I thought to see players like Ryan Christie and Kyogo Furuhashi sort of shine in that game was really, really good to see. And of course, another young Scottish player, much like Ryan Christie, who shone last night, was David Turnbull and grabbing a brace. And he was a player who there's a lot of question marks over how he would fit into Postecoglou's system. I'm glad to see that he seems to have sort of undone some of those concerns about him last night, because the way he bursts into the box and gets goals, I love that stabbed finish for the first goal. I think a lot of people talk about the second one because it was a great effort as well, but I just think that sort of instinctive nature to make sure he got that finish right for the first one is what makes David Turnbull such an impressive player. So yeah, like you said, 13 goals in our last 3 games, but clean sheets in our last 2 is probably a bigger relief for Celtic fans and Postecoglou as well, because that defence has been a shambles for a long time. And I have it on good authority that Joe Hart even made some saves last night. A Celtic goalkeeper made some saves, which must be quite a weird feeling to see, Colin.
I mean, it got a standing ovation, so that tells you all it needs to be said about that. The first one he actually saved with his face, which was even more impressive. No matter how he saves them, he stopped them from going in. Paul Cockwell, who's a resident Hibs, coming in to say, "Whoa, Colin, Hibs are on top." I think it's both on 6 points. We'll get to Hibs shortly because you're playing Sean's Kilmarnock. But John M, who's a Jambo, comes in to say, Hearts will have to keep the ball a lot better to have a chance. Can't give it away like we did at Tiny, or we'll get punished with the bigger pitch. That's very true. It's always more difficult when you're coming to Celtic Park as opposed to playing on that narrow pitch at Tynecastle. I did say back then when we were looking at the opening day fixtures that Celtic would have to get control of the ball, otherwise they would struggle, and so they did. Hearts, again, as we said, 6 from 6. Liam Boyce is really coming to the forefront. Although he's not scoring the goals, he's been very proactive in that Hearts team. And it's going to take a big performance from him tomorrow, along with the other experienced heads like Craig Gordon, who was fantastic in the game at Tynecastle, and even guys like Andy Halliday, if Hearts want to have a chance in this game.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be up for that game at a full Parkhead. It's a shame there's no Hearts fans at this game. I understand this because of the red zone and all that sort of stuff, but the fact that we're back to full stadiums, that's kind of the headline of the last week or so. Scottish football would be great to actually have full stadiums with fans accommodated as well from both sides. So hopefully that's resolved soon. But yeah, I think Hearts have a really strong start to the season. Of course, they shocked everyone on the opening day, and then sort of exercised some demons that they had at St Mirren Park. They hadn't won in Paisley in the league since 2010, so that was a big win for them, and it's great goals from Halliday and Boyce as well. So yeah, it'll have to be a big performance. Of course, the record at Parkhead isn't good. Obviously, Tynecastle with fans back in, and like you said, the narrow nature of the pitch, I think, did serve them pretty well. It's going to be a much tougher contest, and obviously Celtic have started to hit their groove a little bit. But I wouldn't write Hearts off completely. I think there's a good feeling around them at the start of the season, and they'll be looking to. They've made good progress in the Cups the last few years. It's less so the League Cup. I know the League Cup's been a sticking point for Hearts fans, Hearts for a number of decades. They haven't won that for a very, very long time. But I think that, Celtic obviously go in as the favourites, and rightfully so, considering their performances over the last week or so.
Now, there's a talking point I want to bring up that's not actually to do with this game. It's to do with both Ange Postecoglou and with the Hearts manager, who both came out this week with some very interesting discussions. Ange Postecoglou came out and said that he's working on signings, but he's very particular on who he wants in. He says a lot of the fact that the transfers have been slow to come in have been on him. Now, compare this to the Hearts manager who came out and says, and do you know what, his name's totally slipped my head. You can help me out here, Sean. Robbie Neilson. We could have new signings tomorrow if we wanted to. Now, when you look at it, Hearts obviously 6 from 6, Celtic starting to bounce back now. Is it a case of they're both looking for the quality, or is it just a case of trying to appease the fans to let them know that they are working on things, but it's just not quite where they want to be at this stage?
Yeah, I think both have to appease the fans for different reasons, in a sense, I guess. Obviously, last season was nowhere near good enough by Celtic standards. They were, of course, a chance to make history and getting their 10th title in a row, and they weren't able to do that. And I think that it's extremely obvious that additions had to be made to that squad. So coming out and saying that we need to get the right ones for this fit, because Postecoglou's style of play is very particular. You can't just sign anyone and he's going to fit into that side. And perhaps Neil Lennon's a bit more of a pragmatic manager where he could have made that work with sort of different types of players. But Postecoglou know that he needs that technical ability, that sort of tactical astuteness to fit into his system. So that's where Celtic are at. For Hearts recruitment has been genuinely dreadful for a good 5 years or so now.
Don't hold back, Sean. Tell it exactly how you think.
Well, I'm from Midlothian. I know plenty of jambos, and I've heard plenty of moans about Hearts recruitment over recent years. And their head of recruitment left and has now been replaced. And sporting director Joe Savage came in a year or so ago. And I think that Hearts are used to having loads of players in at this point. Hearts fans it's becoming the norm, really, that loads of players would come in at the start of the window. And I would be a little bit reassured that it's not the case, because just because you're getting bodies in doesn't mean they're necessarily good players to have around the club. I mean, Loic Dumore got a 4-year contract, all this big talk about being a very capable player at this level, and was just extremely poor and has been shipped off on loan to the French third tier. So I think that Hearts picking their players are right. I mean, the boy on loan from Everton, Beningmini, I think it is. I've heard so many different pronunciations. He obviously started in that game. I've heard it's the ing that's the emphasis of that, so we'll go with it. He started in that game against Celtic, and he looks to be a very good addition. So if those are the type of players that Robbie Neilson has taken his time to bring in, then fair play. I think Hearts fans would be happier with that. So I think they can be a little bit more reassured. But Celtic know that if any ground is lost on Rangers, obviously they're going through a difficult sort of moment at this period of time. So I think that, but they know that time can't be lost. They need to get players in as soon as possible.
Yeah, we're sitting with, what is it left? 18 days left in the window. It'll be interesting to see who both sides bring in over that period. I think Celtic will need to be the busier of the two teams. I still think they're about 4 or 5 signings away from having any chance of challenging this season. But let's get to the predictions. We've still got another 6 games to cover tonight. This one is a 3 o'clock kickoff. Unfortunately, it's not on Premier Sports, but it will be on Celtic TV. I did see that last night they did a pay-per-view for the first time ever, basically. $9.99 for the pay-per-view, which was reasonably priced. So we'll see if that is the case on Sunday. I'm going to go for Celtic to get the revenge over Hearts. I do think that it's a changed side from when Celtic went to Tynecastle on the opening day. I'm going to keep them that they'll keep their goal-scoring run going. But I do think Hearts could be dangerous, and therefore I'm going to agree here with Jerry H, and I'm going to go with Celtic to win 3-1, and he's going with Kyogo, Christie and Callum McGregor to score the goals.
I think this one is on the telly. I'm sure this is on Premier Sports on Sunday.
Is it? I thought the Aberdeen Raith game is.
I think they've got both. I think they've got those
okay.
two. I'm pretty sure it's a double header on Sunday. So don't tell folk they can't watch the game when they can, Colin.
That's the state of Scottish football.
I'll put your back. Don't worry about it. I probably would have quite liked the 3-1 as well, because I'm not sure about Celtic keeping a clean sheet, but I reckon that the goal scoring run can continue. So I'll change it up, but I don't want to say Hearts are going to get thrashed either. So I will say 2-1 to Celtic. 2-1.
That'll be a very close game if that is the case. I will be there on Sunday to take it in, so I will text you and let you know how it's going, just like I did last week when I asked you how your Kelly side managed to go down to that terrible Dundee performance. And speaking of Kelly, they are playing On Sunday, it's a 2 o'clock kickoff at Easter Road. Jim Datim just coming in to confirm it is live on the telly at 3 o'clock, so that one is on Premier Sports. If we do see any offers, we'll post it on Twitter, so keep an eye out for that. But at the minute, I think it's $9.99 a month or something like that for Premier Sports, which isn't unreasonable. As I was saying there, Kelly going to Easter Road, and Sean, you're going to this one.
I am. I'm absolutely buzzing. It's the first time that I've been able to go to a game as a fan since the start of 2020. So I'm really, really excited. Obviously, I've been lucky to get to games in the press box as a journalist with Energy Sport, but to go as a fan, to be able to cheer properly if we score, to be able to boo the referee, stuff like that. I'm really, really excited for. I spent my evening yesterday phoning the ticket office non-stop before I just got my uncle to go around and get a ticket for me. But I got through eventually, and I have my tickets, and I'm massively excited to go as a fan again.
Now, the good news here is, I believe Hibs and Hearts have now been given the go-ahead for full houses. So they join Aberdeen, Celtic and Rangers. I'm still waiting to hear on the rest of them, but I guess that'll only really come round when they're playing maybe one of the bigger sides. I think they might be okay with the limits as it stands at the minute. So potentially a full house at Easter Road on Sunday, do you think?
Technically, but Hibs are still, after however long of the pandemic and not having fans in, are still doing some work to the two stands behind the goals. So there's a capped capacity of 12,000 at Easter Road on Sunday. So Kelly fans will be in one of the ends at the side, which will be interesting. I've never done that at Easter Road before as a Kelly fan. Usually you're behind the goals, so I'll be separated, I'm sure, by some shirts or whatever. But 1,000 Kelly fans, or 1,000 Kelly tickets, I know they're still selling some, which is a little bit disappointing actually for the first big away day of the season. But I guess it's a Sunday maybe, so fans aren't able to make it. I'm able to make it. That's all I'm bothered about, really. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. And 12,000 will still be a great atmosphere, and all sort of packed together in those two stands actually might make it quite an enjoyable occasion.
Definitely. Now, let's discuss Hibs' performance last night, crashing out of the Conference League after a 4-1 defeat to Rijeka. I think what this game boiled down to really was the sending off of Darren McGregor. I think after that, Hibs really struggled to get back into it. At that point, the tie was level at 2 each. And then 3 kind of late goals in the last 20 minutes see Hibs crashing out of Europe. Did it come as any real surprise? I thought that was probably the hardest tie that any of the Scottish teams had out of apart from St Johnstone with Galatasaray. But if you take that out of it, I really do think that the Hibs Rijeka one, that's one that most Scottish teams would struggle against.
Yeah, I think people were a bit harsh on Hibs last night. I think it's because of the nature of the first leg performance, where Hibs completely outplayed Rijeka and had all the ball and had all the possession. Maybe didn't have clear-cut chances, but when they got to the final third, they kind of broke down, and they should have really sort of made better of the possession that they had. I think that's where Hibs fans' frustration lies, that they could have performed, they could have had a better scoreline coming into this second leg, and they've made it really difficult for themselves heading over to Croatia with the game still level. Last night, I think that the big problem for Hibs that we all know was just underlined even further, and that's the fact that they need to get at least one other centre-back in, because there was mistakes throughout, and some really glaring ones from Ryan Porteous and Darren McGregor, even before the latter got sent off. And sending off, he's kicked a square pass straight off the attacker and then hold him down when he's on a booking. It was just 2 textbook headers.
Yeah, it was daft. Really daft.
It was really daft. And he's 35 years old, and should Hibs, who are gunning for third and maybe even have aspirations of chasing down Celtic and Rangers, should they be still having to bring in a 35-year-old? Yes, Paul Hanlon was injured, didn't travel with the squad. Ryan Porteous, I think, has made too many mistakes now. I think that it's just so obvious. Based off last season, Jack Ross would have known that his top priority coming into the season for me had to be getting a centre back in, and he's still not done it. And I think that it's really, really poor from Hibs that they're at this point of the season, when they've got important European qualifiers. It can be massive for a club. If they go group stage football, the financial implications for that club would be fantastic, and they're missing out on it again because of defensive mistakes.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because obviously Hibs have already come out and they've said that they'll have to sell one of their assets this summer to keep them going. Not that they're in any financial trouble, but just as a business sense, it makes sense for them to sell one of their players. We've often said that it could be Josh Doig that's the one that makes the move. But the other player that most people would say has the potential to make the move is Kevin Nisbet. Now, obviously, Hibs turned down a £3 million bid from Birmingham in January. There's been links of him going to Celtic, as well as some of the other teams in the English Championship. But with that injury to Christian Doig, I always get those two mixed up. Christian Doig, who could be out for anything up to a couple of months, going by what Jack Ross said in his press conference yesterday, it does suggest that if Hibs are continuing to hold out the money for Josh Doig, then this injury to Christian Doig, I'll get it right, means that probably they'll have to hold on to Kevin Nisbet, and maybe the bid for Josh Doig will come down, knowing that Hibs do need to sell at least one player.
Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable. And for me, if they did sell Kevin Nisbet, the most sort of similar replacement, the most easily done deal in Scottish football was Lachlan Shankland. And of course, that's not going to happen now, considering he's just made his move to Belgium. I thought that would have made a lot of sense in terms of those players being pretty similar. Of course, we're still waiting on Shankland to prove himself at a Premiership level, and that's not going to be the case, obviously, because he's headed over to Belgium. But I think that move would have made a lot of sense. But I think they have to keep a hold of Kevin Nisbet, even though he's had a disappointing start to the season for me. I still think that he's one of the better strikers in the Premiership. I feel like he will settle back into his rhythm, and without Christian Doig, I really like as a player. It's just a bit of a bully, but also has an underrated link-up play, and I think those two formed a great partnership. And those two being in a partnership helped Hibs for me because it sort of accommodate them playing a back three. And as I've said, I don't think any of their defenders are particularly outstanding. So when you've got three of them, 3 okay defenders is better than 2 okay defenders. We've seen some teams do that over the last... England at the 2018 World Cup spring to mind, where they didn't have a centre-back that they could truly rely on, so they played 3 of them. And I think that was kind of the case for Hibs as well. And it also it allowed you to have that great strike partnership of Doig. Doig. See, you're confusing me now. Doig and Lisbon. You're making me question myself. So obviously that option kind of goes out the window because you don't really have any other striking options that you'd feel comfortable with playing in a team who should be aiming for third in the Premiership as they were last season. So I think that's a big concern for Hibs. If they can get money for Ryan Porteous, it was interesting in January, that's be the one that I would be moving on, just because as much as like he could become a good player, he has all the attributes. I think over his time at Hibs, he's kind of lost that goodwill he had with the fans because of the sort of a run of errors. And I think that he's still young and, like I said, has potential. There still could be a market for him. So, and you need to get a centre back in anyway. So I'd say maybe do a swap, get rid of Ryan Porteous and invest your money elsewhere, and a defender who you can be confident and it's just less error prone. Of course, you're never going to find an absolute world beater at this level, but I just think to get someone in who's a little bit more assured and can help them all out, because I think they all make each other a little bit nervous handling Porteous McGregor. I don't think there's any sort of real solidity in there, so just someone who can be the sort of dependable arm of that back line would help Hibs massively, I think.
Right, it's time to move on to the predictions. Kelly, as I mentioned, 6 from 6 after that last-minute winner from Jason Naismith against Queen of the South the other week. Do you know what? I don't think there's much in this. But you've got to think that Hibs, being the Premiership side, would be the favourites going into it. I think they've got a lot to prove after Thursday night's performance. Although they'll be tired, the fans will be right behind them and they'll be desperate to put a performance on for them. That's why I've went for Hibs to win, and I think it'll be 3-1.
I mean, I'm in a constant battle between my head and my heart, Colin, and I think the only way you can live your life is with your heart. So I'm going to back Kilmarnock in this one. I will say 2-0 Kelly.
2-0, that is bold.
That is bold, and it's definitely going to come back to bite me.
Stick that one on at bookies and see how you got on with that one. Predictions coming in from Jerry H. He reckons it'll be 2-1, and Daniel Mack coming in for a 1 each draw. I think these games are determined on the day, so that would go to is it straight to penalties or is it extra time?
The group stage is straight to pens, but I'm pretty sure that it's extra time in the latter
Extra
stages.
time. That's right, because Celtic played Dunfermline a couple of seasons ago, and went to extra
Unless
time
that's
against
still
them.
changed since COVID, because I know that some competitions changed, but I'm pretty sure it's back to extra time.
I think that's one that potentially could go to extra time, to be honest with you. It could be pretty close during the 90 minutes, but if it does go to extra time, you kind of expect Hibs to pull it through. They're probably better options off the bench for Hibs than what Kelly have at the moment.
Kelly are unbeaten so far this season. Hibs aren't. Ministers of Errors aside, Kelly are beaten in all competitions this season. So, and actually, including pre-season friendlies, Kelly haven't lost a game yet. So,
to be fair, if it wasn't for the terrible Hibs commentary team and the Hibs media team, I would probably make sure I got my eye on that one. But I'll maybe watch something else. Another team that was competing in Europe last night was Aberdeen, a 2-1 victory over in Iceland, which sees them through to the playoff round for the Conference League. Star man last night for Aberdeen, Ryan Hedges. It was said after the game, Stephen Glass is determined to get him tied down onto a new deal. How important is Hedges to that Aberdeen side?
Yeah, massively. I think he brings a little bit of unpredictability and something that they lost when Scott Wright went to Rangers in January. And Hedges was really coming onto a game last season before he got injured. He's a player that I really, really like, really direct, and showed great technique in that sort of curling finish for his second one last night. I really, really liked that goal. And he's massive because as much as Aberdeen are playing this exciting brand of football, that when you want to be possession based, it can get a little bit sort of monotonous when you just knock it about. You need players who are going to do something different, shift the pace, get in behind, and all those sorts of things. And I think that Ryan Hedges is probably Aberdeen's best bet at doing that. So it would be a big coup for Stephen Glass and Aberdeen if they could get him signed in.
I do think he's one that was kind of in and out of the team under Derek McInnes, but when I saw him, I was always impressed. And then you'd see an Aberdeen lineup and he wasn't involved, and you're going, what's going on? I don't know if he just wasn't someone that suited Derek McInnes' style of football, but he's definitely.
He was too fun for
But to me, he's definitely one of Aberdeen's best players, and you're seeing that over the last couple of performances in Europe. Now, they play Karabag on Thursday night, and I believe the first leg is actually in Azerbaijan. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
So it's a long journey again. We're talking about all these teams that's still in Europe. Squad rotations maybe something that's going to come into it, and they are up against Raith from the Championship, Raith Rovers. 1 point from 6. I mean, if you look up Raith this season, it's already summed up with the fact that they were 4-0 up with 20 minutes to go against Hamilton and still only got a point out of the game. Dario Zanata has been someone who everyone's been waiting for him to make this breakthrough over the last couple of years, and he was very impressive against Hamilton. But again, I think they lost to Inverness Cali last week, and he was kind of drifting in and out of the game. There is the chance for them to spring the surprise, I think, if Aberdeen do rotate the squad ahead of this game on Thursday night, but they'll have to do it without Lewis Vaughan, their kind of top striker, who's been out for 6 weeks with a nasty injury that he picked up. For me, I think there's only one way this game goes, and it's Aberdeen.
Yeah, I would love to back Raith because they're a side I really like. I loved watching them last season. This brand of football they were playing was really an impressive one for the Championship. John McLean's obviously a massively experienced manager in Scotland. I really liked what he was doing there, but they lost key players: Regan Hendry, Kieran McDonald, Dan Armstrong went to Kilmarnock, of course. And I think that in terms of an attacking sense, the one that you're really relying on is Lewis Vaughan. He scored a brace in the opening day against Accies at Starks Park. And he has really struggled with injuries and came in at the tail end of last season and finally started scoring some goals. Yeah. And you thought that if Raith are going to repeat the exploits of last season and get themselves into playoffs again, his fitness would be key. And you don't never want to sort of tag a player with any sort of label, but the fact that he's got injured again is a little bit worrying. So I'd be a concern for Raith this season, kind of without him. And yeah, I think that the form Aberdeen in, just a good feeling around Aberdeen. It's strange saying that, considering how much doom and gloom there's been, despite the relative success. Aberdeen fans have been done with Derek McInnes' style of football for a while, and they were desperate for a change. And there was scepticism about Stephen Glass, but so far he's dispelled all of that. And I think it's important that he harnesses that, keeps a hold of that, because if he can get the Aberdeen fans on side over the next few weeks, then they'll stick with him for a longer period of time. If they do have a little shake, he'll have sort of more credit in the bank. So I think, and that credit would be lost a little bit if they went out to championship opposite. Why did I struggle to say that so much? That's twice now. I'm just going to stop using that phrase. But I think it's another one that you kind of think that's sort of must win for Dons, and I reckon they can do it.
As you sort of said, it's championship opposition for Aberdeen on Sunday. It's a 12 o'clock kickoff and it is live on Premier Sports. The kind of thing for me that kind of sums up the way that Aberdeen fans are feeling at the moment is the sort of pitch invasion after the second goal. Now, a lot of people will say there's no room for that in Scottish football. And I understand that as well, but it does show that, I mean, this is an Aberdeen supporter who at times last year didn't want to watch the games because the way they were playing football under Derek McInnes. They were sceptical of the takeover of Stephen Glass to come in and his revolution, bringing in guys like Scott Brown, some of the older heads moving on. But I think they have really got behind them, and I would be really interested to see. They've got 2,500 tickets for this game against Raith. I'll be really, really impressed if they do sell out the 2,500 and they take them through there to Kirkcaldy. I think that'll be an outstanding one. But do you know what? There's got to be one surprise in this round. And I think if Aberdeen rotate their squad, Raith have a very good chance. Dario Zanata, he's going to be the man for me. I'm going to go for a Raith victory. I'm going to go 2-1 after extra time.
I like it. I'm a fan of it. I like these bold claims. I like backing the underdog. I'm going for Aberdeen. I think they will have a little bit too much for Raith. I do worry about them. And even if Aberdeen are playing kind of second string players, I would still expect that defence of your likes of Christophe Berra and Kyle Benedictus to struggle a little bit with what Aberdeen can offer, even if Christian Ramirez just shows up off the bench or something like that. So I'm going to go with Dons. I'll say that Raith will put up a little bit of fight, though. I'm going to say 2-0.
2-0 to Aberdeen. We are halfway through the Premier Sports preview. We've got 4 games left to cover. Let's start with the kind of the good story that's been going through Scottish football over the last week or so, and that's been St Johnstone. Unfortunately, crashing out to Galatasaray last night. They do drop into the Conference League playoff round. Look, that was always going to be a very difficult tie for St Johnstone. You look at the kind of players that's in that Galatasaray squad. You're talking about guys like Ryan Babel, Arda Turan, who was playing for Barcelona only a couple of seasons ago. But someone who was very, very impressive over those 2 games was Ali McCann. And as we said last week, I think as this window gets towards a close, it's going to be very, very difficult for St Johnstone to keep a hold of him.
Yeah, I mean, I said it on last night's show, but like, what a player. I mean, if you want to listen to somebody just going about Ali McCann, you can check last night's State of Scottish Football on A State of Mind YouTube, and then you can check the week before the Thursday. Pretty much the exact same, because I just think the boy is destined for big, big things. And he spoke as well last night at BBC Scotland after the game. And he just seems a very mature player, and he plays as though he's mature. The way that he gets stuck in and covers ground and pushes forward, he just always seems to make the right decision. And his future is very, very bright indeed. And I personally hope that Saints can hold on to him. I just think I think that another season in that team under Callum Davidson, where we all can acknowledge his talents, but without putting sort of massive pressure on him. It probably helps that he's now not representing Scotland in terms of a media buzz around them, that there might not be that same pressure to burst into the team. And obviously we have plenty of central midfield options at this moment in time. But I did say last week that I feel like right now we're fine for central midfield options, but 3-4 years' time when Ali McCann's bossing it, I think we could be saying, I wish that was when we got signed up for Scotland.
Definitely. I mean, he is only 21. But even in those performances against Galatasaray, he was showing experience well beyond his years. And as I said, now that they're out of Europe, the bids could become more tempting for St Johnstone. We're saying last week somewhere around £1.5 to £2 million, I think, maybe even a bit more than that. And St Johnstone will really struggle to turn that sort of money down. So it'll be interesting to see who comes in for him. I know a lot of the Celtic State of Mind team would love to see an Ali McCann at Celtic. I know Rangers fans were buzzing on Twitter last night about maybe trying to sign him as well. So there'll definitely be interest in him. They go on to play LASK from Austria on Thursday. Again, we're speaking about squad rotation going into that game. I think St Johnstone really tired towards the end of that game against Galatasaray last night, and maybe Callum Davidson will look at this tie against Arbroath as a chance to maybe rotate the squad. I mean, we can't speak about Arbroath without speaking about Dick Campbell, but did you manage to catch his post-match interview after the game at the weekend?
Dick Campbell's? The last time I saw Dick Campbell this season was him getting flattened by the advertising board, and that's the last time I caught him. So you'll have to fill me in on that.
So Dick Campbell, after the game on Saturday, put it this way: he was very, very honest, and probably said words that we couldn't repeat on this show to sum up how his defending went.
And not beating your United would do that to you, though. If you don't beat your United, then that's going to cause any manager real concerns.
Jack Donnelly's just voted this video down. I'm going to bring this point up in a second as well from producer Paul, saying McCann's a real talent, but where would he fit in at Celtic? I'm interested to know what people watching think of that, or if you're a Rangers fan or a Hearts fan or anyone else, where would McCann fit into your side? For me, I think he's definitely a massive talent, and at 21, you want him to get game time, but I think if Celtic sign him, the best thing he could do is sign him and loan him back out again.
He needs to be playing first team football. He can't not
back to St Johnstone. I would put him back.
I get what you're saying completely. I just sort of reiterating it that there's no way a player of that talent should just be featuring. I think that it could be at Celtic's level, but obviously it's a crowded area and you're going to have big squads and they need to rotate. But I think Ali McCann's sort of style as well, being so crunching and covering so much ground, I think it'd be better for him to play week in, week out. I think he would happily keep playing Sunday, Thursday as long as St Johnstone are still in Europe. He seems like the type of player who has the capacity to do that. So I'm more. I'd love to see him stay in Scotland if that's his next move, but more importantly, I think when he's that good, I think he just needs to play regular football. So if that's in the English Championship or maybe even the Premier League, then so be it.
We do have 3 other games to cover, and we've got about 15 minutes left. So it's time to get to the predictions for this game. Now, Arbroath are currently sitting very much like quite a few teams in the Championship with 1 point after 6. 1 point out of 6 after 2 games. They were 2-0 up against there before collapsing to 2 each. Now, I've got to have a go at him because he's a Greenokian. Nicky Lowe missing the penalty to go 3-0 up for Arbroath, and then they go and kind of throw it away. If you could sum up Nicky Lowe's career so far, that would be it. Missing the big opportunities. He's a fantastic player and he's a great guy. To me, he should be playing at a higher level than Arbroath. He's done very well when he went over to Derry City and things like that. But you don't take the chances, you don't get the prizes.
That's the way it is, yeah. And I mean, I was quite enjoying myself last Saturday afternoon when I saw that Arbroath were beating Ayr 2-0, but of course, the honest men pegged it back. And no wonder he was annoyed. I mean, especially when you get a penalty as well, that's going to frustrate a lot of players. But I think Arbroath are a good side still, considering that they're the only part-time team left in the Championship after Alloa were relegated last season. I still think they're going to cause loads of teams bother. And I don't know if we're getting on to predictions yet, Colin, but I think they're going to cause
I'll let you go first.
St Johnstone a little bit of bother. And I'm going to say that I'm not saying Saints are going to go out, but I reckon Arbroath push them to penalties. I'm going to say 1-1 in this game, and Saints just squeak through on pens.
I thought you were going to make this the surprise of the round. Or is Kelly the surprise of the round? Is that the way it would be?
No, it's going to be Kelly. It's been a massive surprise to beat him.
I think St Johnstone will definitely take this opportunity to rotate the squad. I think we've got an Ayr fan in. Wrong one. Cole coming in saying Arbroath never crumbled. Ayr came back fighting. Good to see there'll be some nice some banter between the Kelly and the Ayr fans this year on the state of Scottish football.
I'm going to have to chuck it in my family group chat and try and recruit some Kelly fans to back me up in the chat.
I think this one will be very close. Again, I don't disagree with you. I do think that it could go further than most think. But I just think St Johnstone will have enough. I fancy them to win 1-0. 1-0. So both of us going for a St Johnstone victory. Let's take a look at some of the games that are kicking off on 3 o'clock on Saturday, and let's start, since we do have an Ayr fan in, with Ayr United versus Dundee United. Dundee United coming off the back of that incredible victory over Rangers. First time that Rangers have lost in 41 league games. Charlie Mulgrew, for me, was a star man. He was outstanding at the back. He was getting involved in everything. Jamie Robson with a fantastic finish, but it has been confirmed in the last couple of days that Lon Shankland has made his move to Belgium. We spoke about this last week, and his replacement is already in the door. Mark McNulty joining from Reading on a year-long loan deal. He was there last year and only scored 3 goals. Is he the Lon Shankland replacement, or do they still need to invest in the transfer market?
I'm saying still invest. I'm not sure that they will. I think that £1 million would have been pretty well received at Dundee United, considering their troubles just now. And I think that Mark McNulty probably is seen as the option going forward. But like you said, not particularly inspiring spell. I mean, apart from that first loan spell at Hibs, where he managed to get himself in the Scotland squad, it's been a tough time for Mark McNulty. I did say, I've said this before when we've spoken about Dundee United, that I felt like they played too many forwards last season. McNulty, Shankland and Nicky Clark, and I think they got in each other's way. So maybe Mark McNulty up there himself might serve him some good, or just with Nicky Clark might work out for him. But I still don't think he's a striker who's going to bag you loads of goals in the Premiership. And I could be wrong. He could sort of recreate that form that he had in that first spell at Hibs, like I was saying. So, I just don't think that he's on the same level as Shankland, even though he did struggle in the Premiership last season. So, a fine squad player, I think. But I would, if I was a Dundee United fan, I'd be looking for more recruitment.
Let's speak about Ayr. Again, another team. There's so many teams that are on 1 point out of 6 so far in the Scottish Championship. Obviously, now Kelly are sitting top with 6. They did top their group though, a group that contained Hamilton, Falkirk, Albion Rovers and Edinburgh City. And David Hopkin, the ex-Morton manager, has dipped back into his old team to pick up some recruitments. Fjordhoff, McAdams, McGinty and Salkland. Look, Ayr United, for the budget that they've got, do very well. And I think this is probably going to be a step too far for them at the weekend. They still need to get into the rhythm. I know that will probably disappoint Cole, who's watching. But they still do need to find a rhythm. And I think the concentration for them, as great as it is to get out of that group stage, will be on survival in the Championship this season. And I do think that Dundee United will just have too much for them.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I'll try and do some honest analysis of Ayr United. I do have to say though that top in the Premier Sports group, they did get helped a little bit by Falkirk having to pull out with COVID. So of course they were received 3 points in what would have been that final game, and kind of a decider heading into that one. But then Aki's drew with Albion Rovers anyway, so it didn't really matter too much. Their new signing, Dale O'Connor, I thought looked pretty good at Rugby Park when he came off the bench. Previously dubbed the Irish Messi, which we've never heard that before, a player being dubbed the whatever nationality Messi, and that always goes tremendously.
It goes swimmingly well. It always goes well.
Every single time. But I thought Dale O'Connor looked a pretty handy player when he came on, and there's plenty of experience in that Ayr United side, like those Morton defenders you were talking about who they brought in. I think McAdams was actually one of the top performing goalkeepers in
goalkeeper of the season last year.
Yeah, I think so. I think that Morton, it was goal scoring that really undid Morton last season, but the fact that he was so strong. I mean, I watched Morton play Raith Rovers. I was there for that game, and Raith could have won it by so many more, but McAdams kept them out with a really, really strong performance. So I thought that was a great get by David Hopkin. I was surprised that he didn't start the derby. It was Charlie Albison who has also joined the club, who started that game. So I think that Ayr are really sort of can make games really turgid, and that's a compliment. They're just the way that they can sort of nullify teams and make it really hard for them to break them down. And Kilmarnock certainly found that for a lot of the game in the Ayrshire derby. So I expect them to do the same to Dundee United. I expect them to sit deep and have a low block and try and make it as difficult as they can for the likes of Mark McNulty, and he plays, and all those sort of exciting young players that I hope Dundee United start to use, because that was kind of the promise of Thomas Coates when he got that job. So the likes of Logan Chalmers would be great to see them in this game. But I do ultimately think that United will have just a little bit too much for them.
I agree with you, and that's the reason why I've went for Dundee United to win 2-1.
I will say 1-0 United.
1-0. Which United?
Dundee United. I won't call them Dundee, as Steven Gerrard's been doing for the last week or so.
So, speaking of Dundee, let's take a look at their game, which is the other 3 o'clock kickoff on Saturday. They're at home to Motherwell, coming off the back of that 6-0 loss at Celtic Park, where I thought they were turgid, they were rotten. Charlie Adam was walking about the park as if he'd just been pulled in from a Sunday League over 40s game. The only kind of shining light, if you're a Dundee fan watching that game, was the performance of the goalkeeper Adam Legston. Made 9 saves and still picked the ball out of his net 6 times. That shows you the kind of performance that they were up against. They've struggled to beat 10 men St Mirren. They're lacking goals. I think they're one of the favourites to go down this year.
Yeah, I'm I thought they'd kind of be above some of those other sides, and even Motherwell would be one of them. I thought Dundee would have a little bit of a better season, but off the basis of the start, that might not be the case. There was talk about James McPake getting the MK Dons job. That seems to have died down. Actually, I think MK Dons has appointed a new manager today, actually. A pretty left field appointment, I'm sure it was. So that will die down and perhaps settle things a bit. But yeah, I'm not too convinced by Dundee. Obviously, Celtic are a good side, and they've done that to plenty of teams before. That you've seen either Celtic or Rangers go there and just put goals past teams. But whenever that happens to your club, you always get a little bit worried, because you want them to at least go to Parc des Ibrox and put up a fight, and that wasn't the case.
It didn't have a single shot on goal.
And you can excuse that if you eke out a 0-0 or a 1-0 and you've just been sitting there really tightly in your defensive shape. But they weren't even doing that by the looks of it. I was actually thinking, and we're going to talk about Motherwell as well. You know how I was praising Kevin Van Veen to the hilt last week? I think that we should have a player who has excited me the most the weekend before, who I'm now most excited to watch this weekend as like a regular segment on these Friday State of Scottish Football.
Okay. Let's do this. We'll give you an intro. This is Sean's exciting player to watch this weekend, and it is
Kyogo Furuhashi. He was. I loved the look of him, and that video that you sent me, I'd seen it already. But that one of him celebrating in the stands, just when he got man of the match and getting his round of applause. That's the kind. I'm a cynical person, but that's the kind of wholesome content I need in my life. So yeah, I'm really excited by him. And looking forward to seeing him at the weekend against Hearts. Last week it was Kevin Van Veen who didn't score, so he's let me down. He's scored every single game for the rest of the time. Otherwise, I look like an idiot. But he perhaps won't play in this game. We'll see what Motherwell do in terms of rotation, but obviously they don't have Europe this season to worry about, so perhaps they'll go with a full strength squad, because it's been obviously under Stephen Robinson they got to 2 cup finals in the same season. I'm sure Motherwell would like to go on a similar sort of run and kind of impose themselves, because I don't think they're going to push Europe this season. I don't even think they're going to make top 6, so the cups are something that Graham Alexander might be looking at to getting some joy and getting some goodwill from the supporters, who he's still, I guess, trying to win over fully after only joining towards the end of last season. So I would make Motherwell favourites for this one, and I say they'll do it. I'm going to get my prediction in first in case you want to have it as well. I'm going to say 2-0 Well.
Well, I'm going for 2-1 Motherwell. I'm going for them to win in extra time. I think this one could be one of the ones that goes to extra time. What I do have to say, though, is you've got to give a mention to Tony Watt. He was the only change to that Motherwell side for the game against St Johnstone at the weekend. Comes off the bench and scores, and could have scored the winner. So if there's one way to prove your manager wrong, that is exactly what you need to do. Come off the bench and score a goal. Again, as you said, they've had a very poor start. I think they could be another season in the bottom 6 this year. But I fancy them to get the job done on Saturday. That's a 3 o'clock kickoff. Last game to cover, with a couple of minutes to go, is Livy versus St Mirren, and I have to start by saying, David Martindale, why did you fall into the trap of saying, "Oh, we're going to sign Messi, we're going to sign"? It's a joke. No, enough. I'm sick Are we teams coming out and saying, "Oh, we've signed Messi"? No, stop it. That's primary school part. That was boring. Someone they did sign though is Harry Panayaya. I'll go again. Harry Panayaitu from
I'm glad that was you, not
Aldershot
me.
Town on a 2-year deal. Now, what's interesting is they've signed the striking partnership from Aldershot Town last year. They've signed Harry and they've signed Joe Noble, but Joe Noble's away on loan to Arbroath. So I don't know how they're going to be able to replicate that. But again, that's the 13th signing of the window for David Martindale's Livingston. When you bring that amount of players in, you've got to hit the ground running, otherwise you're in trouble.
Yeah, and they'll feel unfortunate that they're still pointless in the Premiership, considering that Max Stryjek, who's been a pretty solid goalkeeper for Livingston since he displaced Robin McCrory towards the start of last season, he just decided to throw the ball into his back of his own net in the 94th minute against Dons on Sunday, sparking those scenes which were perfectly fine in my book, considering we've all been locked away for a while. 94th minute winners, let folks celebrate how they want. And it's not like you're messing up the pitch. It's the plastic one at Livy. It's no really, is it? And that's coming from someone who supports a club with a plastic pitch. So yeah, I think that Livingston should be a little bit concerned too. A lot of players in, a lot of players lost. And they're a team who I think will really struggle this season. I don't expect them to hit the heights of the last couple of years, just because, I mean, I said it on our preview show that apart from that unbelievable run, they were poor at the start and end of last season.
Really poor, yeah.
I was at quite a lot of those games covering them, and it just felt like it was sheer momentum. I mean, I watched them against Kilmarnock when I was covering that game, and it was just a rubbish 0-0. Nothing had happened in the game, and it got to the 88th minute, and they scored out of nothing, and then they scored in the 91st minute as well. Like, it was just like there was no way they weren't going to win it just because they'd won the previous 8. Like, it was sort of the stars were all aligning for them at that point, and I would be really worried about Livingston this season. St Mirren, on the other hand, are a team I really, really like, and that talk around those talented players that we spoke about, Jamie McGrath, died down, hasn't it? And if they can keep a hold of those players, I think it's a top 6 run for St Mirren because they're really, really talented, and I like the additions they've made as well. So obviously it's not been a great start to the season, drawing with Dundee and then losing to Hearts, but I do feel like St Mirren can improve as if the transfer window ends and they've still got those players, you've got that settled squad, you know what's happening. I expect Jim Goodwin to have a pretty good season. Of course, this is a rematch from last season's League Cup semi-final, which Livingston won with a Scott Robinson goal. He's at Kilmarnock now, obviously, made his debut last week. Hope he plays on Sunday because he's a cracking player. But yeah, I would expect St Mirren to get some revenge on Livy in this one.
Well, again, I think if Jim Goodwin can install some discipline, because that's 2 red cards in 2 games, then they could be a good side this season. Although I do think Livingston, looking at that performance against Aberdeen, they held out for a good period of time, which shows there is a good defence. You mentioned the goalkeeper as well. I think this one could go to penalties, and I've gone for Livingston to win on penalties.
I will go St Mirren 2-0.
2-0 to the Buddies. Well, that covers all the games in this weekend's Premier Sports Cup. If you are getting along to one of the games, then do enjoy. I will be at Celtic Park on Sunday. Sean will be at Easter Road to watch his team get beat off Hibs. It's been great having you involved this week. Not just you, Sean, but everyone that's been watching us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch, on Instagram, on wherever we're on. We're on everywhere now. Tell everyone about the fantastic show that is The State of Scottish Football, covering all angles, all leagues, and it is live every day, well, Monday to Friday, from 6 p.m. till 7, and we are your Friday hosts. So it's been great having you along. Enjoy the football if you're going to it this weekend. We'll be back next Friday where we'll have some league football action to discuss. Until then, stay safe, and coming up after us is the Clyde Football Podcast. Take care.